All right, on today's episode, I'm going to go over COVID data. First, I'm going to talk about colleges and the number of cases that have occurred at the colleges and how many of those cases have resulted in hospitalizations and or deaths of those college students. Next, I'm going to go over some information from a study about Wisconsin high school athletics and the rate of infection for the student athletes versus the people in the same age bracket but that are not student athletes. I'm going to talk about the flu. The flu has now been eradicated by COVID. Wink, wink. But I'm going to share some data on the flu compared to COVID. Those numbers are astonishing. I'm going to wrap it up with California Governor Gavin Newsom talking about the restrictions that he's putting in place or recommending to his citizens of California. They are preposterous. They're out of control. So Governor of California Gavin Newsom and even Dr. Fauci, Lord Fauci, has some suggestions on how we should spend our Thanksgiving holiday. Kick back, enjoy. Let's go over some COVID data and let's try to tamp down that level of fear that is sweeping across the nation with no help from our medical professionals / experts and our politicians who are making the rules as they go. Going to start off with some numbers that come from some of the top universities all around the country. This is going to be comparing the overall case numbers of positives for COVID compared to the hospitalizations of these same people. I'm going to share this because there are so many colleges that are around the nation that are still closed or still doing online learning. Same story for schools around the nation, for public schools, for high schools that are still doing remote learning, and it is severely impacting our children and our young people that are going to college. I'm also going to share some numbers from some high schools around the nation and let you know about the spread of infection when it comes to high school athletics. First set of data I'm going to share is research conducted by writer Andrew Bostom, who has examined coronavirus data from 50 top universities. Testing is way up at these schools. His October report shows nearly 70,000 cases, up from 48,000 in his September report. There has not been a single COVID-related death recorded at any of the schools he's tracking. On Friday, AL.com reported that COVID cases at the University of Alabama had dropped for the fourth straight week. Quote, the school reported 24 positive tests for the previous 7 days after 48 cases were recorded a week earlier. It brings the semester total to 2,374 tests for UA students since classes began August 19th. Out of the 70,000 positive cases of coronavirus on these 50 college campuses, there has been a total of 3 hospitalizations. Again, 70,000 positive cases of coronavirus at these 50 top universities in the nation, and there were a total of 3 hospitalizations out of 70,000 cases, equates to 0.00004287% of cases that have been recorded on these 50 top universities have resulted in hospitalizations for these people. So no COVID deaths, and only 3 of the 70,000 positive cases ended up needing hospitalization. Now, that's a pretty incredible stat because what we hear is that this virus is so contagious, this virus is so deadly, no matter if you're young, old, we still need to quarantine. Quarantining healthy people is one of the dumbest ideas that I've heard, and it makes no actual sense. There are many studies around the country and around the world that have showed that the recent outbreaks that are happening all over the globe are happening to places that have been masked up the entire time and have had very strict lockdown policies. So some data like this really makes you open your eyes and wonder, why are college students not all on campus? Why are college students not mingling with each other? This virus is extremely and exponentially less deadly in the younger population. And the way that we are going to defeat this virus, whether people like to hear it or not, is by gaining some sort of herd immunity among the population. The way we do that is protecting the vulnerable, protecting the elderly, protecting the people that are at higher risk, but also letting the younger people who are extremely more likely to beat this virus and not even end up needing hospitalization. Those people are going to get infected and beat the virus, and that type of herd immunity is what is going to help us beat this entire thing. Is it going to be completely eradicated? No, not likely. Is it going to be gone? Poof. No, it's not going to happen. But we do need to look at the data, and we do need to look at the younger populations and say, okay, 70,000 positive cases at 50 top universities in the United States, and only 3 total needed hospital stays. The fact that we have that data and there's still colleges and there's still places that are locked down and still not letting people go back to campus, or, they're canceling athletic department things, it's really unreal that you can look at this data. You can have people preaching about the data, preaching about the science, preaching about all of this, and then you see this data and you're saying, well, something's not adding up. What the heck is going on? I think that's a pure case of what's going on here. I think people are so wrapped up in their fear and so wrapped up in the gloom and doom of everything that they can't look at this. 3 hospitalizations out of 70,000 positive cases on college campuses. This is a strong argument as to why college students and younger people need to be out in the population and living their regular lives. The data I just shared with you about 70,000 cases resulting in only 3 hospital stays for these college students. That data was from Outkick.com, and this data is also from Outkick.com, who's been tracking COVID and the truth about COVID better than I feel any real site out there. So from Outkick by Ryan Glasspiegel, a new study published by the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health says that the findings suggest that participation in sports is not associated with an increased risk of COVID-19 among Wisconsin high school student athletes. A study conducted between September 6th and October 3rd found that high school fall athletes had no higher COVID rates than the general Wisconsin 14 to 17-year-old population. Of the 209 COVID cases amongst Wisconsin high school student athletes diagnosed during that time frame, only 1 could be traced to sports. 30% of the cases had no known source. The study covered 207 schools that had restarted sports, representing over 30,000 student athletes, over 16,000 practices, and over 4,000 competitive games in September of 2020. With this data right here, it shows why the heck are high school sports being canceled. I know this is one study, but we're seeing that the population of people that are student athletes compared to the population that are not student athletes in that same age bracket, the athletes are at no higher risk of contracting coronavirus from playing sports. Open up the high schools, open up the colleges, let these kids play sports. It's a travesty that this stuff is still going on when we have the data and the science and the proof that backs up the position of reopening the country and getting our lives back to normal. All right, next up, this is going to be my favorite segment because it is going to shock you, I believe, because it shocked me and it shocked someone else that I shared this with. This person is firmly on the left, and whether we like it or not, COVID has become political, and this is something that is extremely troubling to me. There's been a certain sector of people that have been kind of wondering what happened to the flu? What happened to the seasonal flu when this entire pandemic happened? Well, here's some data about what happened to the flu once the pandemic kicked off. This article is from the Daily Mail. Joe McFarland. This is titled, "Has COVID Killed Off the Flu? Experts pose the intriguing question as influenza cases nosedive by 98% across the globe." 98% across the globe in a drop in influenza. Well, isn't that rich? The article starts off, "It was feared by many to be the perfect winter storm, a nightmare situation that would push our health service over the edge. The twin-demic of flu, which kills about 10,000 Britons every year, and a second daily wave of COVID-19. The Daily Mail is a United Kingdom publication. Such was the concern that the government rolled out the biggest flu vaccination program in British history. Take-up of the vaccine is already the highest it has ever been in the over 65s and young children, according to the latest report. There's just one curious problem. Flu, it seems, has all but vanished. The figures provide a startling insight to what has become a creeping trend across the world, and here's the data that is going to blow your mind, but if you have half a brain, it is completely unsurprising. This is from the article. In the southern hemisphere, where the flu season happens during our summer months, the WHO suggests it never took off at all. In Australia, just 14 positive flu cases were recorded in April, compared with 367 during the same month in 2019, a 96% drop. By June, usually the peak of its flu season, there were none. In fact, Australia has not reported a positive case to the WHO since July. In Chile, just 12 cases of the flu were detected between April and October. There were nearly 7,000 cases of the flu in Chile during the same period last year. So from over 7,000 down to 12. And in South Africa, surveillance tests picked up just 2 cases at the beginning of the season, which quickly dropped to 0 over the following month. Overall, a 99% drop compared with the previous year. Dr. Elisabetta Gropelli, virologist and lecturer in global health at St. George's University of London, explains flu and COVID are caused by very distinct viruses, and this is clear to see under a microscope. There's no chance of mistaking one for the other. The fragment of viral genetic material from the coronavirus looks like a bit of spaghetti, while the flu genetic material we test for looks like 8 pieces of penne pasta. Another compelling explanation suggests the presence of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19 and has run rampant throughout the world, has somehow crowded out the flu virus. The theory has gained traction, and there is some scientific backing for the phenomenon. Public Health England studied samples taken from about 20,000 people during the first 4 months of this year as coronavirus took hold and found those who had flu were 58% less likely to also have the coronavirus. This may be more to do with behavior when you have a virus, staying in bed or not going out, which means you're less likely to come into contact with another virus, Professor James Stewart explains. Yet the study also theorized possible pathogenic competition between the two because co-infection, people with flu and COVID-19 at the same time, was strikingly rare. So this begs the question, to me at least, if COVID swept across the globe and COVID was taking out everything, we were supposed to have a twin-demic, and they were calling it the flu, COVID, it was going to be, the perfect storm, just a complete avalanche. Well, what explains a 96% drop in COVID cases in Australia and not a single reported case to the WHO from Australia since July? And Chile has gone from 7,000 flu cases during the same period in 2019 to just 12 this year. If you're not puzzled by this and you're not questioning what the heck is going on, then you are dense. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry at the same time. People were saying that the flu and this were going to be so deadly together that it was going to become an epidemic. People were saying that the perfect storm of COVID and the flu at the same time was going to lead to an epidemic that was going to kill millions of people. Well, as COVID struck the nation, miraculously, the seasonal flu, influenza, just vanishes. Poof, gone. How is that even possible? You know how it's possible? And this is just my theory. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a virologist. I'm not any of that stuff. But let's just put 2 and 2 together here. We find out that this new virus comes out. It's another strain of the flu. This is what we heard early on. Right when this new virus shows up, the seasonal flu, influenza, that sweeps across the world every single flu season, miraculously just disappears. 96% drop here, 98% drop there. Not a reported case from Australia since July, and Chile down from 7,000 cases of the flu last year. This year, it's down to just 12 cases of the flu. An article from Daniel Payne from justthenews.com. Even as worries persist over increasing COVID-19 cases in the United States, cases of another virus, influenza, have plummeted relative to their number a year ago. The CDC and Prevention's FluView Influenza Tracker lists an influenza positive test percentage of 0.3% for week 42 of 2020, a total of 33 positive tests. That's down sharply from 2.4% during the same week last year. Sharp drops in influenza have also been observed elsewhere throughout the world over the past several months. World Health Organization's global flu surveillance shows a severe drop-off in flu cases starting in early April, whereas in past years, flu cases are sustained at a steady plateau over the mid-year months, driven by the Southern Hemisphere's flu season. Phyllis Kanke, an infectious disease professor at Harvard University's T.H. Chan School of Public Health, told Just the News, "It does seem that the rates are lower. I think COVID mitigation measures are likely to lower levels. Some of those mitigation measures may have been particularly effective for high-risk groups for flu like the elderly and immunosuppressed. Nevertheless," she acknowledged, "at this point there are more questions than answers." And CDC and prevention spokesman Scott Pauley offered similar speculation. Yet coronavirus cases nevertheless continue to circulate in many areas with stringent lockdowns. New York, for instance, was put under a stay-at-home order on March 22nd of this year, yet coronavirus cases nevertheless continue to circulate in many areas with stringent lockdowns. New York, for instance, was under a stay-at-home order on March 22nd of this year, yet the state was still recording as many as 10,800 cases in one day over a month afterwards, suggesting that that influenza may have been capable of spreading during that time. Yet influenza cases were still down sharply in New York during that time. The state recorded about a 12% positive rate for influenza tests the week the stay-at-home order went into effect, less than half the rate for the same week the year before. By the first week of April 2020, that rate had fallen to around 1.7%. The same week in 2019, it was nearly 20%. Give me a break, people. If we're looking at this data, if we're looking at the coronavirus, and we're looking at the timing, and we're looking at the influenza, tell me it's just a coincidence that influenza just disappeared and COVID shows up and boom, influenza's gone. So I just want to say, at least one good thing we'll get from COVID is that the flu is now eradicated. It's gone. We don't need it anymore. Flu is gone. It's truly incredible that we get lectured on listen to the data, listen to the scientists, listen to the data, listen to the scientists. Well, I'm looking at the data and I'm listening to the scientists that are backing up their data and writing these papers and writing these opinions and looking at WHO, CDC, and international numbers showing that the flu has dropped by up to 96 and 98% in some parts of the world when COVID hit. Get out of here. If you believe this is just a coincidence, I've got a big, beautiful bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. What's up, everybody? This is JP Fox with the Fox Experience. Just want to take this opportunity to thank you for checking out the show. You can check it out on any of the podcast platforms. We are everywhere: iHeart, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other platforms. Check out the show on Twitter at The Fox Experience. Find me on Twitter at _JP Fox. You can even check me out on Facebook at facebook.com/JP Fox Media. With the podcast on any of the platforms, you can rate, review, help spread the word. Any rating, any review really gets the show out there and really helps spread the word. Again, you can find us on any platform: iHeart, Apple, Google, and all other podcast platforms. Rate, review, share. Check us out on Twitter. I'm looking forward to providing everybody with a podcast that they can relate to, that they can share, that they can listen to, no matter what background you're from. And I hope the Fox Experience is something to make part of your routine. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is now letting people know how they should spend Thanksgiving. First, we had Lord Fauci let us know that families should possibly think about sacrificing getting together this year because of the pandemic and to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Well, first off, before I start this segment, Dr. Fauci, you can kick rocks. Please, please, please put on a pair of sandals, go outside, and just kick rocks all around. You crazy, crazy man. So here's what's going on in the state of California from the governor, Gavin Newsom, and his instructions on what people should do when they spend their Thanksgiving holiday. This list of things was put out by Gavin Newsom a few days ago, and this is an article from Newsweek.com from Sue Kim. California Governor Newsom's Thanksgiving rules explained as severe restrictions put in place. Now, mind you, the LA Lakers just won the NBA title a couple of weeks ago, and there were thousands of people in the streets of LA celebrating the Lakers' victory, which is what you would expect in a city when their team wins the championship. But we're in the middle of a pandemic, and as we know over the last few months, if you're on the streets for the right reasons, or protesting for the right reasons, or rioting for the right reasons, or you're celebrating the right reasons, or the Women's March, then the coronavirus doesn't matter. But apparently in California, if you get together for Thanksgiving, that matters to the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Here are the rules that Gavin Newsom has laid out. No more than 3 households. All gatherings must include no more than 3 households, including hosts and guests, and must be held outdoors, lasting for 2 hours or less. Which is interesting because I thought the coronavirus, based on information that we've gotten over the last 100 million months that we've been going through this crap, is that coronavirus can spread within like 15 minutes, stay on surfaces. So why is 2 hours or less the right timing there? Don't get that one. Masks must stay on after eating and drinking. The new rules state that those at a gathering may remove their face coverings briefly to eat or drink as long as they stay 6 feet away from everyone outside their own household and put their face covering back on as soon as they are done with the activity. Singing and shouting is strongly discouraged. Singing, chanting, and shouting are strongly discouraged because they pose a very high risk of COVID-19 transmission. That's funny because I'm sure no one was chanting and no one was shouting when the Laker fans were out in the streets celebrating the Lakers' victory. Singing, chanting, shouting, and physical exertion significantly increases the risk of COVID-19 transmission because these activities increase the release of respiratory droplets and fine aerosols into the air. Those who do participate in these activities should, quote, do so quietly at or below the volume of a normal speaking voice and wear a face covering while engaged in the activity. Musicians are allowed at the gatherings, but they must be from one of the 3 households. The playing of any wind instruments is strongly discouraged. Next rule. Keep it social at a distance. The space for the gathering must be large enough to allow guests to maintain a physical distance of at least 6 feet from those who are not in the household at all times. Seating must provide at least 6 feet of distance in all directions, front to back and side to side between different households. Next one, maintain hand hygiene. Well, didn't know that one, Mr. Newsom. The wider picture. Total confirmed cases in California have surpassed 887,000 with 17,000 reported deaths. Average daily new cases in California have been declining sharply since mid-August and flattening out from early September. The average count increased from March to late July when it peaked to 9,500 on July 21st. So if I were a resident of California, I would be laughing my tail off. I would literally be hysterically laughing because when I read this, I was hysterically laughing. Anybody that abides by these rules, I don't care that the governor has put them out. We should be done with this stuff. People are fine with just giving up their freedoms, giving up their liberty, giving up all of the things that are given to us as a free society in this amazing country called the United States of America. And then we have government officials who think that their word and their power is such that they don't have to abide by any other rules. They don't have to look at their own data. They don't have to look at their own science. They don't have to look at riots, protests, marches, Lakers winning the championship, or any celebrations in the LA streets. But Gavin Newsom has some strict guidelines for you if you decide to get together with your family for Thanksgiving. Yeah, right. If you abide by these and you live in California, you're a sucker. And I honestly feel bad for you that you live your life in such fear. But if you abide by this authoritarian rule by a governor who thinks he can run your life on one of the best holidays of the entire year, he can also kick rocks with Dr. Fauci. And Dr. Fauci telling us that we should possibly sacrifice Thanksgiving this year to avoid the spread of the coronavirus. Well, you know what, Tony? How about no? How about no? We're almost at the election, Tony Fauci. We're almost at the election now. We've been doing this for 7-8 months. Every single one of you has changed your mind on every single position since the beginning. And now you want to try to run our lives on Thanksgiving? You don't got nothing to say when people are in the streets rioting. You got nothing to say when people are in the streets for the Women's March. You got nothing to say to California residents when they're in the streets celebrating the Lakers' victory. But God forbid we get together with our families without strict guidelines. What is Gavin Newsom going to do? Is he just going to send out cops in plain clothes and knock on every single door in California wondering if they're all abiding by the rules? Yeah, right. If they think they're coming in my house, if I was a California resident, if they thought they were coming in my house on Thanksgiving to see if I was following their dumb restrictions inside my own household, they'd have another thing coming. They got another thing coming if they think I would just, oh, my bad. Okay, oops, that's on me. If they think that I would literally just bow down and, oh my God, hey, this household, everyone leave. Oh, we didn't have a musician in the family or the group. Well, we got to stop playing music. Oh, well, our seats are only 5 feet apart, so I guess we're breaking the... Yeah, right. Give me a damn break. If you're not a California resident and you're reading that and you're not laughing, you're a sucker and you deserve every single bit of restriction that they put on you because you not living your life like this and you living your life thinking that government is going to solve all of your problems. That's your problem. It ain't anybody else. You can blame whoever you want. The governor makes the rules in your state. Your governor is putting these restrictions on, and you are either going to abide by them or not abide by them. That's up to you. We live in the freest nation in the history of mankind. Start standing up for yourselves and start acting like free citizens and start acting like you have some say over your life and what you do on family holidays. The only way this madness stops, everyone, the only way this madness stops is if we start standing up for ourselves. If we're against these lockdowns, if we're against these restrictions, if we're against mask mandates, if we're against not being able to work, if we're against our kids being forced to learn online on Zoom calls where they're literally learning nothing, If we want to do that, then cool, we can just sit here all day and just let the government run our lives. But if you believe that you live in a democratic society and the freest nation in the history of mankind, that's not how things work here. In authoritarian regimes, in China, in Russia, in places where they have dictators, those people have their lives 100% dictated by these people in their governments. And if you just want to sit back and slowly but surely just give these people more and more and more power over your lives, just thinking that they're going to have the answers to all of the problems, this should be a warning sign to you. This should be a warning sign to you. If you're a California resident and you read that and you don't get entirely pissed off that the governor picks and chooses which events and which people can have restrictions and which don't need restrictions, start standing up for yourself. Start acting like the free citizen that you are. Enough with this stuff. The only way that it stops is if we stand up for ourselves. The more we cower like sheeps in the corner, the more they feel they have power, and the more they actually do have power over you. They're scaring you, they're fear-mongering you into not wanting to live your lives. On Thanksgiving, go celebrate with your families. Don't worry about these stupid restrictions. Be smart, just like we have been over this entire ordeal. Wash your hands, be safe, all of that good stuff. I know that myself. I went to a wedding out in New Jersey at the beginning of this month. Definitely over 100 people at this party that we partied with for over 2 days. I knew probably 15, 20 of those people. And you know what I did when I got home from New Jersey? I stayed in my house for a week. I didn't go see my parents. And out of precaution, I took my temperature every few hours for 3 days straight. Because I was around people that I didn't know at a celebration. And what you're supposed to do is, if you do get yourself in those situations, be smart about it. If you don't feel good, don't go to the events. If you feel bad afterwards, then stay home. Myself, even though I had no symptoms or anything, I went to a wedding, came back to Arizona, and I was the responsible person that I am. I'm a responsible adult, and I should be treated as such. And even though I may have personal feelings about the coronavirus and about COVID and about the restrictions, even though I may be against all of this crap that they're putting out there into the world, I still took the precautions. After I went to a big celebration, went to a big event with people I didn't know, I came home and made sure that I took the precautions just in case I picked up the virus and was asymptomatic. I stayed away from people for a week. I took my temperature without even feeling like I had a temperature, and I tracked it. If I didn't feel good, I would stay home. That's what we should all be doing. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Enjoy every moment you have with your family. Because every moment that is taken away from you by the government, that's on you for letting them take your freedom away. Stand up for yourselves, start acting like Americans, and start acting like the free individuals that we are. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your friends. Really helps spread the word on everything. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on any of your podcast platforms. Drop the show a 5-star rating and leave a review if you'd like. Again, share the show with your friends. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Rate, review, tell your friends, tell your family, and I look forward to catching you back here on the next episode of The Fox Experience.